and this will go in other places. Welcome everyone to session 20 of the engagement room with our fantastic speaker tonight, Distinguished Toastmaster John Morrow. Again, the format is 20 minutes for the speaker and then 40 minutes or so afterwards. And John, we're still okay for about 15 minutes afterwards, so I can do like an little extra clip. Excellent. All right, so let's get into learning a little bit about our speaker tonight. So, John R. Morrow, a Chattanooga baby that was born at the foot of the Appalachian Mountains in Tennessee, back where I'm from as well. He was born, I'm not going to give the year, I don't want to do that to you. But he's a graduate of Trevecca Nazarene College in Nashville, Tennessee. He's married to Donna and has one son, Donald, also Donna, and that's granddaughters, I'm sorry. He's a retired claims adjuster for a major automotive insurance carrier and been a Toastmaster since 1985. He's got 2 Distinguished Toastmaster medals hanging around his neck. He's a member of 3 clubs and a coach of 4th. He gave his first TEDx speech on February 21st, 2026 in Lake Alfred, Florida. He loves to serve, coach, and be a mentor of Toastmasters especially, and speak about the journey of grief, not as a tale of sorrow, but as a journey of intentional living forward. He also is a podcaster, and I need to look into this. It's called, his podcast is called Resolve to Live Forward, author of Resolve, Blueprint for Intentional Success. You can find that on Amazon, and we'll put that up here. But the title of his presentation tonight is When Does It Stop Hurting? Learning to live forward while on a journey of deep grief and heartbreak. Let's welcome John Morrow.
I wake up in the morning, I pull the covers off, I shift myself so that I can set up, I put my feet on the floor, I stand up, and I say, ouch. And it occurs to me, time has its way of really making us feel the pain. And we have to ask ourselves the question, is the hurting ever going to stop? And the truth of the matter is, with respect to that in time, no, it doesn't stop. There are ways to handle it, but the truth is, there are some things in life that we don't get an opportunity to be pain-free. But it's important as I talk to you tonight and have this conversation with you that I give you the context of why I'm talking about it and why I chose the title, Does It Ever Stop Hurting? The context is this, and I want you to understand it before I take you through a journey of what I have learned in this experience. I want you to remember this date, if for no other reason, because in my life, I can never forget it. I don't know that I want to forget it, but whether I wanted to or not, I will never forget it. June 2nd, 2019. And really what happened at the particular moment in my life when I was in an emergency room at Lakeland Regional Healthcare Hospital. And I heard an attending physician who is a cardiologist who said the following statement, and I quote, time of death, 11:11 a.m. That was 45 minutes after I found my wife collapsed on the floor in the kitchen unconscious. Until that moment, I was hoping, I was praying, I was expecting, I actually believed. I was in denial. I figured they'd get her to come back. But the truth was, when I spoke with the cardiologist, she told me the moment she hit the floor, she was already dead. But it wasn't until I heard that phrase and those words that all of it came crashing down. And you need to know that context for this reason. Some things don't stop hurting. I'll give you an example. I came out of the automobile insurance industry and I work primarily in a field called personal injury. In the state of Florida, we have a form of medical no fault. There are only a handful of states that have this kind of insurance, and my job was to work with the policyholders who'd been injured in car accidents. And most of the injuries I dealt with involved what we would call soft tissue injuries, whiplash, sprain strain, that sort of thing. And I know I've been in a car accident and I know what it's like to get my neck all out of kilter. But there was an important thing to remember. The treatment process that they went through with the doctor or with whatever clinician they chose to get the treatment from, there was going to be a point where the doctor would say, I've done as much as I can for you. At this point, I'm going to write a final diagnosis and give you a final statement of where you are on your journey to recovery. And there is a phrase, maximum medical improvement. And they may include what we call a percentage of disability. And in soft tissue injuries, sometimes it's only 1% or 2% or 5%. But the point is, they've done the best they can. You're never going to go back to what you were before the automobile accident. And if you've been in a car accident, you get it. You know how that feels. I remember my doctor clearly telling me there will come a point in my life as I begin to age where I'm going to start really beginning to feel it. And he wasn't lying. He was completely correct. Now, what does maximum medical improvement, after having good treatment and care and applying good behaviors physically in order to maintain some type of quality of life, what does that have to do with the death of my wife? There is such a thing, I believe, in the grieving journey as maximum emotional improvement. And you will find yourself at the end of everything that they can do to help you get through the process of grieving. But you will never return to the condition that you were before. It's simple. Nothing like it had ever happened before in my life, and nothing like it, thank God, has ever happened since. Now, have I experienced grief? Have you experienced grief? Of course. I think all of us have gone through journeys of grief. And I think it's important for us to also understand grieving is not just about death. Grieving is a broken marriage. Grieving is losing a job that you loved. Grieving is a terminal diagnosis. Grieving is a house fire. Grieving is a broken relationship. Grieving is bankruptcy. There's all kinds of moments in our lives where we experience grieving is the loss of a beloved four-legged friend. I have had to say goodbye many, many times to four-legged friends that I loved dearly, and I believe they loved me back. Don't think for a second it didn't break my heart. It did. But when I lost my wife of almost 46 years on June 2nd, 2019, I was shattered. Why would I even want to try to find a way forward? And I asked that question. But I remember something that happened involving my wife just a few months before. To be exact, it was in November of 2017. Donna and I were retired. I was still doing my Toastmasters thing, and this was a Monday night, and I had gone to a meeting in November on that Monday night, and we happened to talk about the subject of resolutions. And my friend, Maggie Sabatier Smith, who is a life coach working with women in ministry, gave a speech about basically ending resolutions. But she asked a question. How are those resolutions that you made at the beginning of 2017 working for you? And of course, I raised my hand and I said, we didn't make them because my wife and I learned real quick in our life, we suck at resolutions. So we didn't make them. But when she started talking about a power word, some people thought, okay, there's fluff. I'll be dynamic. My power word's enthusiasm. My power word is energy. My power word is ecstasy, whatever. But I went home and I told my wife about it. And Donna and I realized as retirees, we had so much more that we could do. so much more than we could give, so much more that we could be excited about and contribute to our lives and to the lives of the people that mattered. We knew that coming up in 2018, our son, our one and only son, was finally going to get married. That's right. It took him till he was almost 38 years of age to get married, but he was getting married. And we absolutely fell in love with his fiance. And we were excited about planning for that wedding in 2018. And there would be other things that would take place. But we knew we needed to start the year with something more meaningful than just events that we planned and random events that happened to show up. We were just going through the motions in the retirement journey. And so we sat down, we talked about a power word, and the question came up, well, what about the speech? Resolutions. Wait a minute. The root word of resolutions is resolve. So we started looking at definitions of resolve, and we noticed that there was a definition that said one having a definite, firm plan of action. And the more we thought about it, the more we realized if we approached each and every single day with the attitude of resolve, seeing ourselves as becoming something better, didn't matter that we were retired, we were still functioning. We were still capable of being productive. But we took an additional step. We decided to take and find a behavior that we wanted to adopt on a day-to-day basis based upon each of those 7 letters. Those 7 letters became the framework of the behaviors that we insisted on practicing each and every single day. The letter R was for resilience. The whole idea of even getting up, putting your feet on the floor, standing up and getting out and going is an exercise in resilience. But there are also the events that happen that bring us to a sudden stop. And do we have the resilience to pick ourselves up off the floor and keep going forward? And with that, when you get up and you start, you agree that you're going to engage the day and whatever it brings. Not just what you plan to do, but what you may have to confront that is either something that presents you an opportunity or something that you learn to avoid. There are all kinds of possibilities. Life doesn't promise us that everything's going to be rosy. But if you don't engage the process of living on a day-by-day basis, you're shortening yourself. You're shorting yourself of something that could be an opportunity to gain knowledge, to gain relationships, to gain opportunities. The letter S in resolve we chose for service. As a Toastmaster, I already had this great appreciation for serving. It wasn't just about what I got out of Toastmasters, it was more about what I could give back through Toastmasters to people who were in Toastmasters, as well as to the people in the community and to immediate family and friends. The letter O, which was probably my biggest problem, had to do with being organized. If you have a definite, firm plan of action, you have an end in mind. But you need an organizational structure to make that happen. So I laid the groundwork, and my wife and I tried to have a plan of action for every single day by organizing our life daily. The letter L was something that for me was very natural. I love learning. I continue to learn. I have a hunger to learn, and I found that learning actually is very life-giving. The letter V, the word we found for the letter V in resolve was have a vision, be visionary in your mindset. Look ahead, see what it is that you want to do. And don't just imagine it in a faded framework. Put that thing onto a vision board. Flesh it out to its color, its size, its time, its date, the very patterns. It be so specific that you can literally see every detail of it in your mind. And the last letter E, we decided to choose the word enthusiasm. But I'll ask you a question. Do you feel enthused every day that you get up? I'm going to tell you right now, I don't. There are days when I don't want to get out of bed. There are days when I don't feel like it. And sometimes in life, what you have to do is you have to will yourself to be enthused. You have to make up your mind to choose to be enthused. And it was those 7 behaviors of resilience, engagement, service, organization, learning, visionary mindset, and enthusiasm that brought about this process in my life that started happening in 2018, but would turn around during the days, months, and now over 7 years since my wife has died. How many of you are fans of a particular motion picture entitled The Shawshank Redemption? It is at the top of my list, and I never tire of watching it. But one of the phrases that I remember in The Shawshank Redemption that stays with me more than any other phrase is when Andy turns around to Red, when his last hope of exoneration from being possibly freed from charges that he was never guilty of, and those had been taken away from him cruelly by a warden who had selfish motives and no other intention other than to serve himself. And Andy turned around when Red scolded him because he talked about hope. Yet Andy didn't appear to have, based upon that story, any hope of ever getting out of Shawshank. And so he turns around to Red in response and says, "You're probably right. I guess it comes down to this: get busy living or get busy dying." And for me, the choice was get busy living. But to get busy living, I needed something to put it together. I needed structure. And I had it ready-made right there in front of me in the form of resolve and those 7 behaviors. That became the defining structure that gave me a reason to live forward and helped me to understand that I was choosing to live forward, not because I wasn't hurting. I was living forward in spite of the fact that I was hurting. Now, there was a time there during the course of this process as I was going through these changes that I thought maybe I'll start to get used to this. That's a lie. If you ask me the question now, 7 years after the fact, when will it stop hurting? I'll tell you, it'll never stop hurting. And if you've been down the road of grief, you understand that feeling and you know it to be true. Structure. But when the hurt comes, what do you do about it? You reframe it. One of the most powerful things that I heard in my life through the counseling I received was how to take that moment that tends to be the most gut-wrenching, cathartic, and painful, and will literally render me helpless. The moment I heard those words, I see that emergency room. I see that lifeless body on that table. I heard those words, time of death. But I reframed it with the help of counseling by taking that picture and draining all the color out of it so that it sits in a little frame, black and white. I'm not minimalizing her. I'm minimalizing its impact upon a life that is full of beautiful, vivid, and wonderful, colorful experiences, both in the 46 years that we were together and what has happened in my life in the 7 years since. And lastly, I have community. I continued with Toastmasters. I stayed with family. I spent more time than ever with my son and my daughter-in-law. And wouldn't you know it, not even 2 weeks after my wife's passing, my son and daughter-in-law found out they were expecting their first child. And the following January, not even 1 year after she passed, my daughter-in-law, Claudine, handed me a beautiful baby girl that they had named Donna. And since Donna has come into the world, another baby girl has arrived in 2022 named Elizabeth. And best of all, they only live 45 minutes from my house, and I get to commute and go over there and spend time with the granddaughters, but that is family. And then my community is also the family of faith that I continue to stay with because when I was broken, they were there to pick me up and help me through. When we had the celebration of life, the Toastmasters came to that and they saw me through the process. Family came together. And in return, I am there for family because family is what continues to bring me up, build me up, and help me. So in life, when you face this process, and you want to know if the hurting is going to stop, I assure you it's not. But that's not the same as giving in to the fact that it can make you debilitating. Here's the truth. Grief doesn't have to define us, but sorrow is a reality. And if you don't do something about that sorrow, I assure you that sorrow will make the choices for you. That's truth. But for you to be able to overcome that and to find your way forward, to live forward, to make the choice to live forward, you must have structure. You must reframe the event so as to not let it dominate your thinking and become that which defines you rather than drives you forward. And always, always remember there is strength in numbers through community. And for me, community is family, faith, and my Toastmasters community. Yes, I got busy living. Yes, it still hurts. But that's okay. There's hope in the fact that what you have in the life of the person that you've lost or that thing that meant so much to you was legacy. And that legacy, you get the opportunity to carry it and pay it forward. And in carrying it, it doesn't define you. It helps you to become a better version of you. Living forward's a choice. And in living forward, I realize it's okay to hurt because guess what? I've got the right things in my life to give me purpose for every moment of every day. Thank you.
Let's give our speaker a fantastic round of applause. Thank you so much, John. That was wonderful. Wonderful, heartfelt, great engagement. Thank you so much for that. I really, really appreciate that. Just keep on this. Let's keep on doing that. Excellent. Excellent work, sir. Definitely. All right. So now we're going to change up the gallery up here a little bit so that way we can have multiple speakers. All right then. So at this time, who is our first question out there in the audience? Who's out there? You can raise your hand or you can just go ahead and start speaking. Who is it? Sandra.
John, I've heard you speak so many times, and I have so much respect for you. And it seems as if this message that you've shared with us for this crowd is extremely applicable. But how do you take living and the message of forming your days and your weeks and your year to young people?
That's a good question because I'm not 100% sure. The first problem, obviously, is when have young people really experienced something for them that is so disruptive that it shatters them and brings them to a crashing halt? Yes. Think of children, for example, who witness a marriage break up and they watch their mother and father in conflict and they suddenly see that relationship ripped apart. And then they become really the victims, in a sense, of that irreparable damage. That's a form of grief. Speaking to that is different for children than it would be for adults who have gone through grieving experiences. And for youth, particularly what I call our emerging young adults, those who are in the adolescent phase, so many distractions in life that sometimes they get disconnected from us. I often see people holding devices in their hands, and I'm wondering what they're watching on TikTok or what they're watching on Instagram or other types of social media. And I think to myself, what would they do if they were confronted suddenly with an unexpected death? But every now and then you'll see something happen where in a school, sad to say, there have been school shootings. Those are traumatic beyond anything you could imagine, and it's horrible for a child to go through something like that. But there are people who are actually trained clinicians who can come in and talk with them. But basically, the question they're going to ask is, how do you feel right now? How does this make you feel? What do you think about that? And they probably will try to put on all kinds of different kinds of excuses and say, I can handle it. I can move forward with it. I'm strong. I can do that. It's not that big of a deal. And in reality, I'm not sure how I would be able to convey the message to young people because I've not been presented with that option or opportunity. And it's hard to answer that question, Sandra, but I'm so thankful for the fact that there are people out there who are actually trained and skilled and spend their time in that discipline and work to make sure that where it comes to children and to adolescents and to the young, the opportunity to receive the kind of counseling that is necessary for grief and to understand grief and to be able to, in a sense, if you don't mind the expression, embrace the grief and own up to it and realize it's okay. I don't have that skill set yet. I'm still working on getting the attention of adults, even people in my own age group.
Well, thank you, Sandra. Who's our next person? Michael?
Yes, John, thank you very much. I was really moved by what you shared. I can really relate to that. My grieving is I come from a life of addiction, and I still carry that grief, and it still hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what you were saying there, the same with the Shawshank Redemption, get busy living. And I could really relate what you were saying and how that applies to me and how I live my life. And the same thing what Sandra was saying, sharing with that with kids. That's a great story to share with people that are dealing with addiction because of the grieving process
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of us go through. Is that something that you might consider?
I would. And the reason why is because I have had the opportunity to come into contact with people who have suffered with substance abuse,
Hmm.
and their suffering is genuine.
Hmm.
And let's be honest, we sometimes think of addiction purely as being a substance issue. I know that in the grieving community, there are some people who, because they can't cope with the loss, they medicate, they self medicate.
Hmm.
And that can have lethal consequences. I'm reminded of something, and I wish I could find that picture because it was on the wire services, but those of us, my contemporaries, will remember when Pat Nixon died.
Hmm.
And one of the pictures that was presented in the newspaper on the front cover the day after she was laid to rest was a picture of Richard Nixon walking away with a group of people, including Secret Service agents, because he always had a Secret Service contingent with him, even though he had resigned as President of the United States. The look on his face was what I saw. It occurred to me in that moment, just based upon the look on his face, that he had lost the most important thing in his life. And when you know it, it wasn't that many days and weeks afterwards that he himself died. And so often I've heard of people who just simply curled up in a fetal position and waited to die. There was no reason to try. And those individuals who tried to self-medicate it with alcohol or with pharmaceuticals, with illegal drugs, whatever it was, that was simply a Band-Aid because when it wore off, the pain was there and probably the pain was even more pronounced. So there's another group of people who don't have the grieving experience from a death event, but like you talked about, Michael, they came in contact with these substances and found those substances to be very comforting for them at a point in time. But then they realized that they no longer were comforted by the substances. They craved them, needed them, and they felt they would die if they didn't have them. And when they finally had to confront the reality that they were trapped in an addiction, which they're never going to be 100% cured for, they will still be addicts, but they will be recovering addicts. But that's a journey of grief. And that's a one day at a time, one step at a time, one good behavior at a time, step by step, which is why structure is so important. Because if you have a framework that you can go back to consistently that sort of governs what you choose to do on a day by day basis, even if you have a situation where you go running into a ditch, you know where the road's at. And if you can get yourself out of the ditch with help and find your way back, even if you have to crawl and claw your way to it, you get back onto that road, you get back into that structure, you get back into those practices, and you keep doing them, mindful of the fact that you will always carry that pain. It will never go away. So I don't ask the question, when will it stop hurting? I'm beginning to realize you can't stop hurting. We're wired that way. But it's okay. You're a success story. That's victory.
Thank you.
Well, John, I've got a segue for you. As a Army retiree, retired officer, and then also someone who came back from combat duty in Iraq. Have you worked with veterans that have issues with survivor's guilt or with anything that may be related to that? Because I've dealt with this working with vets. They're incarcerated or they might have been homeless or what have you, and you hear the stories. I mean, you know that, you're aware of that. But I mean, what's your experience with when it comes to living forward and dealing with grief as a mentor for men and women like that?
In terms of the first responders, military, one of the things that I have learned is that I am not as equipped to deal with something like that, but I've been fortunate to have been counseled by a former military serviceman who also was deployed to Iraq and came back with PTSD. And he committed his life to working with these individuals, not just military, because he was U.S. Army, but also with EMTs, with police, and even with hospital emergency room workers who often see some of the worst come through the doors, and they've got to be ready to do that. One of the things that I've thought about doing, of course, I have to have the additional financial resources in my budget to do, is I'm thinking I want to subscribe to HBO and watch The Pit, because I've been watching some of the talk about that show and some of the YouTube videos that they talk about. And of course, Noah Wyle is one of my very favorite actors, and I watched him when ER was on TV decades ago on NBC. But that whole story there is an example of people who, how in the world they manage to survive that kind of carnage consistently for a 12, 13, 14-hour shift. And then imagine someone who is in the field of battle on the front line under fire. And there is no time limit on that. You fight until you either win or you're dead.
Right.
And while you're there, you're watching your friends fall by your side and they die,
Right.
they sustain terrible wounds. I wish that I could say I knew how to handle something like that. So when I meet an individual who is a victim of that, and that's victimization.
Mm-hmm.
This particular individual, his name is Dan Jarvis, who really helped me understand my PTSD, although it was on a much lower scale compared to
Right.
theirs.
Right.
I refer people to them because I've learned swim in the pond that you can swim in and don't get in a place where you're going to be underwater all the time. Because I don't consider myself to be qualified, even clinically qualified to talk about all kinds of grief, just the grief that has to do with carrying a tragedy in your life, primarily around the death of a loved one, or perhaps maybe something like a broken home, a broken marriage, or a loss of a job, or a bankruptcy, or things of that sort. And I've learned point them to the right kind of help and the
Yeah,
help that you know and can trust.
right. Then that's sound because like you said, you don't know you don't know exactly where they are, and just sympathizing is not good enough. You have to meet them where they are. You have to have similar experiences. You have to be able to do that because if you don't, you might end up doing more damage or actually, not necessarily turning them away, but discouraging them for seeking more help. And, you know, we've all heard stories.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I don't want to do something to them that trigger.
Oh, of course. Oh, and that's, that's another challenge in itself. Okay, so we have let's see. Who's our
And
other
Anetta,
who's got their hand up right now?
Sally, Anita.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
yes.
you. Thank you, John. This was an outstanding, not only speech, but my question is, as you found the resources for you, I'm just curious, how did your family, they weren't on the same journey as you, but yet they had their own grieving as well. What support or what can we do for those family members?
I have, let me begin by this because I come out of a faith-based background. When Christmas came around, as we were approaching the holiday season of 2019, with the memory of my wife's death still very fresh, I don't even remember how I found out about it. I was introduced to a one night only meeting of a group surviving the holidays. And I found out when I went to it, and it was held at a church. It was actually by an organization called, I believe it's called Grief Share. And they are faith-based. While I was there, they gave me a book. It was a small booklet. I still have it in my bookcase. And I devoted myself to using the book because they showed videos. They talked about the grieving experience. They talked about steps that you could take because the holidays are very awkward. First Christmas without my wife after 46 years. My son's first Christmas without his mother after 38 years. The whole thing was just getting a handle on what to do because what do you say? How do you respond? People, when you're going through grief and they come around to you, especially in the early part of the grieving process, they mean well, but if they don't really understand the depth of the sorrow and the mourning, they'll say things which they have no ill will whatsoever in their hearts and thoughts. But it's not helpful. It doesn't help. And you just sit there and you wonder, yes, well, this is not helping. I want to get away from it. But I remembered when I was going through life in the normal set of channels and I had friends who lost their loved ones and everything, I said the same things. And I realized suddenly that until you walk in those shoes, you really don't get it. And that's not to say you're bad. It just simply means you don't understand. Until you're there, you really don't get it. There's a difference between trying to understand it here and realizing you understand it from here. It's a whole different thing. But I do remember that particular tool not only helped me find things that I could do to help me get through the holidays in a less awkward and more meaningful way, I was able to share it with my son because he was grieving as well. He was not yet a father, by the way, but his wife was very pregnant. So during that process and everything, I shared that with him. And together, because it was really just me and my son, we had this time of healing. Now, as to my wife's brother and sister, they had their own way of doing things. They had their own set of values, and it was it, it didn't come up in the process, but it also introduced me to that organization of Grief Share, so much so that the following spring, when they had the 24-week series, which includes videos and a much thicker workbook that you had to fill out week after week after week, plus you came together and you watched the video, and then you sat around tables and you openly, vulnerably, authentically shared your sorrow with one another. And so, although it was weepy at times, it was also very encouraging, because after watching the video, we realized you should feel this way. This is perfectly normal. You have a right to ask these questions. You have a right to have these concerns. The lessons that taught me helped me to begin to realize it's not just about what I do, but it's also about how I conduct myself when I'm around other people, not just as a member of the grief community, but also as a person who can continue to pay forward something to make other lives useful. And it played an important role in helping me, as well as other counseling that I got. But family was by far the most important thing. And then my family of faith was always there for me. And they stayed there for me, and they continued to back me up and help me through the process. And obviously, I cannot tell you the number of times Toastmasters friends have come to my side and have helped me. Truly, I have three incredible families: my blood family, my family of faith, and my Toastmasters family. And they really represent the core of the community that I'm involved in. And they see me through times, and they take me as I am and realize I do mess up, but they give me some grace.
Thank you, Annetta. Thank you so much. Jackie, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, John. I found this incredibly valuable. And I'm wondering, as people go through the different parts of grieving, what is helpful and what is not helpful?
Mm. Sometimes it's trial and error. Let's be honest. When you're first on the journey, you really don't know what you should do. And really, sometimes you don't know what you shouldn't do until you're up against it and you're confronting it face to face. It's good to have counseling. It's good to find time to read, and there are a plethora of resources on grieving. I do want to point something out. There are probably more books on grieving than need to be out there. Somebody always wants to write a book about grieving. The reality of it for me was, since I had some structure in my life through community, most of what I learned about how to navigate this road of living forward and having a meaningful life living forward, not moving past grief, but moving forward with the grief and putting the grief in the right place as I carried it, so that it didn't overwhelm me. I still have bad days, and there are days when I stop what I'm doing and say, I'm taking the day off. It's a mental health day. But in reality, I'm still learning about grief. And so what I'm doing now is I wrote about grief in my book, and I started doing a podcast. I'm in my third year. And in the podcast, I talk about grief. But I've reached a point now where I'm actually utilizing artificial intelligence and letting artificial intelligence, through me talking to it and telling it how I'm feeling and what's going through my mind, AI is now pulling resources for me to help me to do a better job with my podcasting. And I'm finding that my podcast content is getting better as far as guidance But most of that guidance is not about references to a particular book or a particular organization or a particular structure. It's more about the mindset aspect of how to deal with grief. And the first thing I learned to do was I learned to simplify. In other words, don't make it a whole bunch of different things. Get it down to the crux. Do you want to continue to live forward, or you just want to quit? Because that's going to be one or the other. I know that sounds like oversimplification, but in reality, just like Andy said when he turned to red in that movie, he said, either get busy living or get busy dying. What we didn't realize, of course, was that Andy had been busy working on living and clinging to hope for over 20 years. We just didn't know that he was digging a hole in the wall in his cell for 20 years. We thought, what's he going to do now? He never gave up hope from the moment he set foot in that prison. And as far as I'm concerned, that was when grief slapped him upside the head and knocked him flat on his back. Yet he found a way to hope. And he believed in hope, and he never quit hoping. So that's the simple answer to a question that is different for everyone and complicated for everyone. And I've found that the longer I live forward, the more I simplify. I just simply get down to the crux. What can I do now? What matters the most now? And that's one step at a time, sometimes not even knowing where the second step's going to be. I hope that was helpful.
So, a follow-up to that would be your families that supported you. Was it something, a specific behavior, or task, or reaching out that you found most valuable?
I didn't tell you this. I think, Sandra, you probably know this. Donna died on June 2nd, 2019. 1 week later, June 9th, was my 69th birthday. But it was also my son and daughter-in-law's first wedding anniversary. That day, we could have said, Donna's dead. Let's just do the mourning thing. No. We went to church together. We had dinner together at the house. And then we celebrated their first wedding anniversary. And while celebrating the first wedding anniversary, here's a true story. And by the way, if you watch my TED Talk, I actually tell this story. In the fellowship hall where they had the reception, there was a jar. And there were these pieces of paper beside it, and they asked folks to write a note of encouragement. And the idea was fold the note of encouragement, put it into the jar, close the jar, and then on the first wedding anniversary, open the jar, read the notes. True story. Absolutely true. They read the notes. Now, you got to remember, we went to church, we had dinner together. Now we're celebrating our first wedding anniversary. It's bittersweet. There was laughter, but there was lots of crying too. There was lots of crying. And as my son is reading the notes, some of them are very touching. Some of them are funny. We laughed. We reflected on the people that wrote them. There was one note, I swear, one note left in the bottom of the jar. He pulled it out. There were 2 words written on the note, nothing else. It just simply said, and I quote, "Make babies." It was my wife. She didn't have to sign it. From the moment they got married, she said, "I want to be a grandma. Make me a grandma. I want babies." So we had the next day on the 10th, her celebration of life. And my son eulogized her. I eulogized her. And there were people that knew her over those 46 years that eulogized her. And I was enthralled and thrilled with all the love that was poured out. And then The next night on Tuesday, I went to a Toastmasters meeting and the phone rings. I pick it up. It's my son, and he tells me, Dad, are you ready to be a grandpa? None of that would have happened had the family not engaged and went on living, which is why I named my TED Talk, Living Forward is a Choice. We chose not to curl up and die. We chose to get busy living, and family played a key part in that. But so did my Toastmasters family, and so did my family of faith. All three involved in that string of events that began on June 9th and ended on June the 11th.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking.
We had a latecomer here, Mr. Peter from New Zealand. We can all say, give a big American hello to our brother, down in Kiwi land. So hope you're doing well, brother. It's very, very happy to see you. Were you able to catch any of John's speech whenever he was in or on Facebook?
I'm sorry, John. No, I haven't. But I'm always interested in hearing. The thing is, down here, of course, because we're down under, we're actually upside down. So we hear kind of differently. If you were to see me, I'm actually sitting on the roof right now. I know I appear quite normal and sitting on the ground, but in actual fact, we're upside down. Okay. So sometimes it takes me a while because the blood goes to our brain, that sort of thing. So it takes me a while to actually come in and say g'day to you all. But this is a big g'day from little old New Zealand. For those of you who don't know, I'm a professional keynote speaker and MC. I train people in public speaking and have just released 3 pieces of software, 3 apps that will help you in your public speaking. I'll put links to them in the chat. I've written 4 books on public speaking and have started a membership program called the Speaker Guild. Everything can be found on my website. And so that's me, basically. I'm just a good old Kiwi rugby loving, ex-rugby player, motorsport loving.
You're probably a fan of the All Blacks.
Yeah. I've seen him once or twice, John. Yes,
I've seen them a few times too.
Yeah.
In the
That's right.
Six Nations, for example.
Yeah, Six Nations. Yeah. Well, I only gave up rugby myself last year at the age of 66. I was the oldest rugby player.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Another neck.
That's no small feat. That's no small feat.
Yeah, we're still playing full rugby. Yeah, we're still playing full rugby, and unfortunately, I got a neck injury and concussion, so it ruled me out.
That's tough.
Yeah. But anyway, hey, good to see you guys.
Okay. Thank you, Peter.
It's 1 o'clock here in the afternoon on what's today, Thursday.
Yep.
Yeah.
And not only are we upside down, but we're also ahead, right?
Your day ahead, yeah.
For me here in the Sunshine State of Florida, it's 9 p.m. on Wednesday night.
We're New Zealand's ahead everywhere, including Australia. So, and by the way, we don't have a bridge between New Zealand and Australia. It's a bit far.
Oh no. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Deep water.
Good to see you.
Deep water. Yeah, it's a pleasure, brother. Definitely. All right, we got to stay on time. We got one more question out there. It's coming from Sandra. So, Sandra, what's your final question tonight?
John, you've heard me speak, and I've been in Toastmasters for 38 years. And a lot of people have said, well, why aren't you doing a TED Talk? Part of that is fear, but I don't want to admit that. But what I do say is I don't have anything really to say. And yet you took a part of life, the death of your wife, and turned it into a powerful speech. What made you so bold to do that and to reach so many people?
Well, the dream was planted first by a friend of mine who lived in Florida at the time and was a fellow Toastmaster over in Winter Haven, Florida, just 11 miles to the east of where I live here in Lakeland, Florida. His name was Mark Guy, but he was originally from Western Siberia. And Mark actually had a particular message that he wanted to give, and it was so compelling because the whole principle of a TED Talk, whether you do it as a TED or whether it's a TEDx, which is a subsidiary of TED, ideas that change lives. It's not so much about storytelling ability, although my storytelling played a role. It was more about, does this idea work? Can this idea make a difference? And through the journey of grief, I found the inspiration to realize that because of what my wife and I put together in that November night in 2017, after I heard that speech about adopting a power word and how we built upon that, we scaled that into something that became a structure for living day by day and putting forth best personal practices for successful living day after day. It was that very formula that we put together that became the thing that saved my life. And then it occurred to me, I should give this to people. That's what prompted me to write the book, Resolve, Your Blueprint for Intentional Success. It's not a masterpiece in any way, form, shape, or fashion. It's not a bestseller, but I'd never written a book before. And it was Mark Guy who put his thumb in my back and said, write your book. And he put me on a program to write chapter by chapter by chapter by chapter until I finished the book. In the meantime, Mark did his TED Talk, and I learned about TED by watching him speak, and then I learned about the organizations, and I started applying. Then I went to the TEDx in Ocala, and I saw more great speakers, including Toastmasters that I knew across the state of Florida. But what I learned was you need to have something that you can give to people that they truly could take and capture and use and put to work in their life. It's about an idea that changes things. And I had to stop being a Toastmaster and had to start thinking about somebody who would give people something that they could use, something that they could actually put to work in their life, and it would make a difference. And when I started thinking in that way, thanks to Mark's guidance, and then the feedback I got from other TED speakers that I knew, I realized I had a message here. I just had to find the right conference that would accept my message the way I presented it. And lo and behold, it was March of 2025 that I filled out an application, submitted a 3-minute video, told them what I wanted to talk about. In August, I got the letter stating, you are going to be a TED speaker for Lake Alfred, Florida. And in October, we started the process. And then February 21st, I stood on that stage in Lake Alfred, outside on the stage, by the way, not indoors. And I did that presentation. It was only 10 minutes, but I realized that is a doable for anybody, including you, Sandra. And you could do it with something as simple as talk about food, because you are a master chef and you do recipes. And food is your life, and you use food to show people how much you love them.
And she also is a fantastic collaborator and helper and builder upper, which is also a coach. And I have to say, Sandra, again, for everyone to know this, Sandra's been an extremely vital resource in this podcast. We could not have met John or Michael or several other people without Sandra's influence over this project. So, and now,
I
go
love
ahead.
the concept. I just love this concept.
Thank you.
And I think it's a great way for Toastmasters to get away from the meeting, give their speech, and then let the conversation continue. And that's what I love about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's been very refreshing for me, Tim. I'm honored that you
Well, thank you. Well, I'm glad. Well, here we are at the end of session 20, the active one, because we're going to, John and I will talk for a few more minutes after this. Let's give our speaker one more round of applause here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, John. Fantastic presentation, great dialogue, and great connection with our speaker. So now as we end this session, on July 8th, our next session will be with Toastmaster Mikkel Nielsen. He is a member of the Bay Street Breakfast Toastmaster Club and Simcoe Speakers Toastmasters in Toronto. So we'll have another Canadian speaker coming in on that day if he gets all this stuff to me. And we will go from there and then also start getting ready for the end of this Distinguished Toastmaster project. Season 1, as I've said for a few people, is my DTM project, and hopefully I'll have something hanging around my neck by December if the club coach works out. So again, you guys, I give you your time back. Thank you so much for being a fantastic audience. I appreciate every one of you, and I have to thank you personally. And I mean, John, Linda, Annetta, Jackie, Michael, Michelle, and Sandra, Peter, and especially you, John. Thank you so much. So at this time, I'll turn off the live and the session 20 is done. So thank you very much. Appreciate all you guys.
Great session. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Take care, everybody.
All right. Cheers, brother. We'll see you.